Hello everyone. This is a series that I've had planned for a while, and I really hope I can commit to writing it unlike every other series I try. Before I kick off this series, I would like to preface that I am not a fighting dev, I am not a game designer, and most importantly, I am not perfect. My knowledge of fighting and fighting's future and balancing everything fighting wants to do could be completely incorrect. And I would like everyone to know that I am someone who simply wants to share my opinions and ideas rather than put them out as absolute fact. That said, you must keep in mind my intent of making these videos, to share thoughts that I have regarding fighting. This series is solely personal, and I see any viewers and subscribers that may come from it as people who simply like my ideas. I will never ask you to subscribe or like throughout the series, as again, it is purely personal. With that major disclaimer out of the way, you've read the title, let's talk. Also, I was, and still am, sick throughout the entirety of the recording process of this video. The footage in this video has been supplied from these people. If you want to support my channel, support these people instead. This script was added after the Coil balancing changes were added to the zone, so it will not be touching on those. Coil certainly has a reputation. When they were announced, as far as I know, they managed to become trending on Zitter for a game that barely manages 1,000 players at any given time. Aside from being the newest true fighter in the game, not counting Boombox because he's technically old, Coil has a lot going for them. I'm assuming you know how Coil's main gimmick works, which is of course the coils. Coil is probably the slipperiest fighter in the game, and also the most capable of the highest potential damage. Not to be confused with DPS, as Coil is outclassed in DPS by the majority of the roster, the potential damage because of the sheer amount of damage he can deal if he wants to. Because they're so new, Coil has no real counter in the current meta. The only thing that comes close is Boombox, but even that fight feels extremely fair, sometimes even favored to Coil. Anyway, a fighter that is near impossible to hit, with no counter and insane potential damage, should be absolutely meta-defining. And in Coil's case, they are. They function as a diver with supportive capabilities, and while their tethers are limited, it doesn't really matter when Coil himself is so strong. If your team is a healer and needs extra support and Boombox is an option, smack on Coil and call it a day. In a vacuum, Coil seems absolutely game-breaking, but in practice, Coil is subpar. Because Coil's main gimmick of constantly switching modes to dish out as much damage as possible, anyone who has even tried Coil will tell you that they are probably the steepest learning curve in the entire game. Learning how to kill confirm, focus on your modes, all of Coil's movesets, adapting to situations. Coil has a lot of problems when it comes to new players. Let's discuss why this is a problem. The main idea of Coil is to have the player constantly switching between gravity, speed, and regeneration modes to pump out combos that can shred opponents in quick times. Gravity mode is primarily focused on damage, speed getting in and out of situations, and regeneration, or simply regen, is assigned to survivability. Each mode has two unique moves, your E and M2, which I will not be going over in this video. Your Q is your only consistent move, and it's the move that cements you as a support fighter, being your tether. This move does technically vary, but it only slightly, by changing the buff you give to the tethered ally. This is where most of Coil's problems lie. No, not in your tether. In fact, Coil's Q is probably the most balanced move in the set, aside from gravity tether being underwhelming. The majority of Coil's issues lie in his balancing. Unlike most fighters, who have one moveset and can be buffed and nerfed to fit the meta at any time, Coil, because he has three movesets, can't be balanced. This is a very big claim, but let me back it up. Okay, scenario time. Let's say you have an attack that deals 10 damage and an opponent with 100 health. Your attack has a 2-second cooldown. You kill your target in 10 hits after 20 seconds. Now, let's add some complexity. Now when you press R, the cooldown is cancelled, but the R itself has a cooldown of 0.5 seconds. Your target dies in a quarter of the original time. This is the current standings of Coil in the highest level. Obviously the numbers are exaggerated for simplicity, but for the most part this is how players like B with sunglasses play Coil. Now we get to balancing. Let's say the developers buff the damage output to 25 to fit the meta and don't change the cooldown or R gimmick. Now your opponent dies in 2 seconds. This is absolutely broken, and the exact reason why making Coil stronger is impossible. Also, this situation talks about Coils at the highest level again, so don't take account for missing attacks, your team, and whatever the case may be. My point is that if you buff any of Coil's moves by a significant amount to make them easier to pick up, then the fighter's damage would be far too high if you did choose to switch modes. And since Coil's damage is underwhelming, there's no way to fix him. That I know of, at least. I did try to make a couple concepts to make him a little bit more viable for newer players, but that's not what Coil is supposed to be, so we're going to ignore that. I really quickly want to touch on Fusion mode. Coil's finisher is actually quite good. Newer finishers have been hinting at having the fighters be separate modes rather than instant damage, and Coil's finisher shows this concept. It also shows that if Coil had one moveset, they'd be pretty damn viable. While Fusion mode is busted, it does have a learning curve of its own, which is, like, problematic because it's a finisher. So, quick side note, I want to put in that changing Coil's gimmick is near impossible. If you change Coil as a gimmick, he would change fundamentally as a fighter and be completely different. I love the switching gimmick, the problem is that it's fundamentally broken, which is what we are breaking down in this video. But why isn't Coil viable if they are so good in theory? Shuriken is a kind of broken fighter right now. They have one moveset, but that one moveset has a combo that nearly breaks the game. E plus M2 plus M1 does a 131 damage combo for little to no price. This is more than half of Biograph's HP, and certainly enough damage to be a threat to even Katana. While Coil can technically do this too, Shuriken does it much faster, Shuriken does it immediately, Shuriken does it for a lower price, and most importantly, Shuriken does it in a way that can be balanced if need be. It begs the question of why even play Coil if Shuriken is better and easier. So we've established that the core issue is that Coil cannot be balanced and that he's outclassed by most fighters that require less skill. These are not necessarily bad things, these issues are technically prominent in Scythe too, not touching on that now though. But what makes Coil actually so bad? When making a comp, there are fundamentals you must consider. However, the main core of a comp is tank, healer, diver, tank buster, the majority of the time for Conquer, and in Annihilate you substitute a tank buster for either a diver or a backliner half the time. Coil, as we established, is a diver with supportive capabilities. However, Coil's main issue in comps is that they have to fill every niche and no niche at the same time. They can be a tank buster, but subspace is better for that support role anyway. Sword and Biograph are melee divers, and Medikit and Vine Staff are healers. Boombox can be a speed support, and they do it far better because they can support the entire team, whereas Coil can only support one fighter with their speed tether. Scythe is the multi-tool that Coil wishes he could be. Coil is outclassed by everyone. The only thing Coil can't do is be a tank, but that's not what he's supposed to do, so that doesn't matter anyway. Let's say your comp consists of Sword, Vine Staff, Rocket, Banhammer, or Katana, and Boombox or Scythe. Coil would have no place to fit because he wouldn't fill any role that hasn't already been filled better. The main issue doesn't lie in Coil's balancing, doesn't lie in the moveset or playstyle. Everything Coil has running for him is great, but Coil's Achilles heel is the fact that he tries too much at the same time and always ends up doing too little, making him extremely challenging to fit in comps at the highest level, putting him as just another character on the roster. Thanks for watching. I'd like to know what everybody thinks of my opinions in the style of video over the old bullshit I was uploading. I'm not going to go over anything more, keep you here a second longer. This is Ganymede, have a good one.